Hey everyone, this is Cardfight bringing you another standard match. This time, two decks I haven't really featured on this channel. On the left, we do have Greedon, and on the right, we actually have Rorowa. So I would say both of these decks are kind of a bit of a lower tier, lower power level caliber in general. Just because they can't really compete with the current meta. But at the same time, I would not really underestimate either of these decks because they really do have quite a bit of potential. And they have been getting quite a few good support cards in the recent sets. So definitely keep an eye on these two decks, especially Greedon. Some of you that have been following regional championships will know that Greedon has actually been topping quite a bit. And we even saw some representation for it at Worlds. Anyways, getting into the match, Rorowa is going to be going first, passing over to Greedon. Greedon's actually going to get a critical trigger, pushing Rorowa to 2 damage. Rorowa's actually going to be going for a little bit of a rush, calling out the Adamantis, and actually giving an extra 5k to that other token that gets called off the ride line, which of course gets called when you retire a rear guard. You get to call 2 tokens when you ride over the grade 1, or when you ride the grade 2, rather. So doing a little bit of rush, which I think is kind of Rorowa's honest win condition. Rorowa has a lot of potential to just like early rush and aggro. So by the time we get to that grade 3 turn and we start multi-attacking with the Radina, it can actually be pretty threatening if you're not prepared for it. But getting back to the Greedon, we are just going to be seeing him do the ride line. You do actually get to reveal the Greedon in your ride deck and draw a card when you ride over the grade 1. Going to be swinging at the Vanguard. That's going to be hitting for a 15. It is going to be met with a critical trigger, so it is a really good idea that we guarded that. Honestly, you probably would have guarded that anyway because you are at 2 already, and you really don't want to be pushed very much further because Rorowa is not really a deck that goes through a lot of counterblasts. Depending on your build, you can, but most of the time you're using Soul to make most of your plays. You need kind of like 1 counterblast for Radina. So anyways, going into the Rorowa's first grade 3 turn, things are just a little bit awkward because we do have rear guards in both columns, and Rorowa is a deck that needs 2 columns, or it kind of needs 1 column to be devoted to the Radina and Momoka column. So probably just deciding what we're going to be, which one we're going to be overcalling. And looks like we are going to be overcalling that Adamantis, and then just using the Momoki skill to pop the 2 tokens that we have left over from the ride line, and just pump it up by an extra 5k. Going to be using the Rorowa skill, actually only choosing to call 2 tokens, because we're just going to be calling out that Inlet Pulse, which is pretty good. Definitely, if you're able to see your Inlet Pulse when you're playing Rorowa, things do get quite a bit easier. Not only do you get extra draw, but I think what's also really important is that extra soul that Inlet Pulse gives you, because Rorowa is a deck that does go through about 1 or 2 soul every single turn. Gonna be swinging that Vanguard first for 18. Actually gonna be hitting into a heal trigger, so that Greedon in the damage is gonna be healed out. The Inlet Pulse is gonna be swinging for 18, which is not gonna hit. The Moke is gonna be swinging for a 15, which again is not gonna hit. But the Radina with the skill to Soul Blast 1, taking the power of the Moke, is gonna be hitting for a 25, which is a pretty good number. Even against the 20k, that still calls for a 15 shield, but we are just going to be taking it and going straight to 3. So, going to be riding into that Greedon. Looks like we are going to be activating the skill of the grade 1, which I believe lets you tuck a card from hand into soul, and you search out another copy of the grade 2. So we are going to be seeing a Greedon going in from hand into the soul. So that is already 2 Greedons out, which if you really like Persona riding, is kind of concerning. It's a little odd that he did put another copy of Greedon into the soul. I mean, you do already proc the skill of Greedon where you die at 7 now, but you are losing out on that Persona ride, and we have already seen 1 go to the damage zone, so your chances of drawing into another one are getting much, much lower. So, looks like we are calling out that Desire Devil. Sorry, I'm not going to remember all their names. But it basically lets you counterblast 1, call the top card of your deck, and at the end of the turn it retires. And we're going to see another Greedon actually called off the top. Which is a little unfortunate because, once again, that's your third Persona, your third Persona ride. 1, 2, 3. All 3 of them are out of the deck. So meaning this game is not going to be one that you're going to be persona riding. Calling out that owl, which I think it came out in BT8. If I'm not mistaken, it's that or it's a promo. I know it's one of those. But anyways, I'll explain the skill in a little bit. But we are going to be swinging that Vanguard. We don't have any effects triggered yet, because the grade 2 from the ride line gives your Vanguard an extra 5k once you're at limit break. So we're going to be swinging 2 to passing it, but actually hitting the over trigger here, which is deeply concerning if you're facing the Greedon. Not to mention it gets followed up with a critical trigger, so we are going to be taking 3 damage from this Vanguard swing. And remember, Greedon is a Vanguard that actually restands rather than re-rides. So it is going to be keeping the 100 million. So if you do not have a PG in your hand at this moment, you are just dead here. We are going to see the owl procced. It lets you put something into soul. We're going to be putting that alligator, swinging the Greedon for another 100 million. Thankfully, we do have the PG in the form of that Elementario, so we are going to be living this turn. So I often joke that Greedon's win condition is honestly just hitting the OT, because I mean, Darkseid's OT is an amazing OT to hit offensively. It kind of just like pressures so hard into the game, and especially since you're swinging with the Vanguard twice, it's like double the pressure. And not to mention that Greedon, as opposed to all the other Darkseid's deck, does really have an easier time hitting that OT, considering that it is drive checking pretty much 4 times every single turn. So the chances that it actually hits are pretty high, at least higher than most other decks, I would say. Anyways, getting back to Rorowa, we are going to be seeing that grade 1 from BT8 called out, and it is going to be popped by the Momoke along with the other 2 remaining tokens. The skill of the grade 1 is actually going to pump up the Momoke by another 10,000. It gives a 10k to any grade 1 or less rear guard, as long as it gets retired by your card ability. And we are going to be seeing the Rorowa Order, which is basically a different kind of spiritual body condensation. It's Soul Blast 1, reborn something from your drop zone, and then instead of giving the reborn unit an extra 5k, you actually call a plant token instead. But going to be swinging with the Vanguard first for a nice 18, getting a critical trigger there, so pushing the Greedon to 5. Going to be swinging that Inlet Pulse, which I believe is at 22, because yes, or 23. We gave it the power from the critical, so that's gonna be met with a 5k guard. The Moki is gonna be swinging for a nice, let's see, it got an extra 20k, so it is at 25. Gonna be swinging the Regina using the skill, making this a 35, so that would be a 15k block. But we are actually gonna be taking it and just going to 6, which is something I've never said before, because thanks to that Greedon in the soul, we actually die at 7. So yeah, we are just going to be sitting at 6 going into this next turn. Obviously not going to be persona riding because we have 2 in the soul and 1 in the drop, I believe now. Going to be calling out the copy of the grade 2 that we searched out. Actually, I think we called it last turn, so this must be another copy. And now that we are at 4, the skill of that grade 2 is actually going to be live, so the Greedon is going to get an extra 5k. And if we put that other grade 2, we get to get another 5k. Anyways, that grade 1 there is a interesting tech option. Basically, you Soul Blast a grade 1 or greater, and you put 2 grade 0s from your drop into the soul. So I think that's actually a pretty decent tech. Obviously, you're not going to be swinging with it because it's Greedon, but it basically gives you a +1 to soul, just kind of, and without, it gives you a +1 to soul and without like attacking your deck, because I'm pretty sure Greedon has some deck out issues, which is why they don't really play draws that much. But we are going to be seeing the 2 copies of the Rabbit and another copy of the Owl actually coming out. So we do have the 4 standing rear guards that we need in order to restand the Vanguard. Thanks to the over trigger, and it looks like we have 2 copies of that grade 2 already. Since we're at limit break, it's going to be getting an extra 5k for each, so an extra 10k. Along with the over trigger that we checked last turn, this Greedon is going to be swinging for 33. So honestly, your potential for living this turn is very, very small. We used the PG last turn, and this Greedon is going to be swinging twice. So you hopefully, if you want to survive this, I think you really need at least one other PG. You kind of have to hard guard this first Vanguard swing. Thankfully, you don't really have to worry about any rear swings, or I would normally say that, but we do have the 2 rabbits, which we're going to see used in a little bit. Honestly, with the amount of cards we have in hand, unless we have like 2 perfect guards, living this is going to be very, very difficult. So like I said, once again, this is a 33 swing from the Vanguard. Oh, and I suppose something else I should mention is the fact that Greedon is at 6 kind of means the fact that you actually can't 6 damage heal, because if you hit that trigger, you're still at 5 and your opponent is at 6. You actually can't even heal down in this situation. So everything about this situation is just completely one-sided. You're really seeing the power of Greedon. Looks like we're actually going to be guarding for 38, which is a 1 to pass. So we're going to check in that drive check. Nothing and nothing. So it looks like the Rorowa is going to be surviving that Greedon attack. But of course, that's not the end. We are going to be using that skill, Soul Blasting out 2 cards. Soul Blasting those 2 triggers. So we are seeing that grade 1 putting in some work. Choosing 4 rear guards and putting them into the Soul. Electing to put the Owl, which is kind of interesting that we didn't boost with it last turn, especially if we were. Well, actually, no, it makes perfect sense, because Greedon has to put standing rear guards anyway. Using the Owl skill to put another one of those crocodiles in there. Did I call it an alligator last time? Well, whatever, that thing. But that skill is actually going to be coming up in a little bit. Going to be putting that, the grade 1 and the 2 rabbits into the Soul. And then proccing both of those rabbit skills, which is when they are put into the Soul, you can actually counterblast 1, choose a card from your hand, and you actually can call it out. And at this instance, that alligator skill actually does activate, because while it's in the Soul, if one of your cards is called by an ability like this rabbit skill, it actually gets an extra 5k. And I do believe that procs twice because we have the 2 alligators. So this grade 2 that we just called out is getting an extra 10k from both of those cards in the Soul. Calling out another rabbit off the other rabbit skill, and due to the alligator skill, we are actually going to be giving it an extra 5k. Oh, and the rabbit actually lets you draw a card if you have 10 cards in Soul, which is another reason why that grade 1 giving you that extra +1 to the Soul really matters. So this Greedon is going to be swinging for a really, really big number. It gets an extra 15k when it restands, so it is 28. With the 2 grade 2s into the Soul, we are at limit break. That is 38. And then OT is going to make this a 48 attack. Not to mention the other rear guards can still swing. We don't have 4 rear guards, so we can't actually restand again for the rare Greedon double restand. But we do have very nice columns. I mean, the grade 2 on the left, I guess it can swing out Radina. But the other column is really big. It is 28, 38, I believe. If I'm correct about that alligator stacking, because we do have the 2 in Soul. Looks like we're trying to desperately count triggers, because really, you don't have a lot of hope going into this. You have to be able to guard this Vanguard swing, which once again is at 48, and you have to be able to guard that other rear guard column, and you cannot bet on a 6 damage heal, because a 6 damage heal will not save you here, because it's not even going to go off. So it looks like we're going to go 40, 53 to the Vanguard, which once again is another 1 to pass. So we got to see if it's going to be able to pass, or if it's going to get the job done again like it did during the last swing. Right, going into those all-important damage checks, and we are going to see a critical trigger, so that's going to be 3 damage, no chance of a heal, and that's going to be the end of the match. I hope you guys enjoyed. Go ahead and do all those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.